It was a week ago Wednesday, the fifth day that we were in Haiti, the five of us from St. Paul's who traveled there. And I and Daisy Girafalco, who many of you know, spent the day with folks from the Children's Nutrition Program, which operates in rural mountaintop villages in Haiti to do the good work of monitoring young children for signs of health and vitality and offering advice and information about how to well nourish your children with limited resources. The drive up the top of the mountain was challenging. We literally drove through a river. We were making wake in our vehicle. We then turned to go up and ascended quite steeply. We reached the top, got out of the car, and kept walking further and further into the mountains. We reached the home of the woman we were trying to see. Her name is Regina. And we got into her home, which was a kind of three-room dwelling. And inside the room was a table, very simple, with some chairs around it. No light, no electricity, no running water. And we sat, and she produced a giant silver basin, which she laid on the floor right in front of the chair. And she produced a big container of water and a bar of soap. And she bent down, and I thought, this woman is about to wash my feet. It was actually my hands that she was going to wash. And it was remarkably like what happens every Sunday at the altar when I turn to the crucifer, or Rachel does, and we offer our hands to be washed as a sign of our coming before God with a pure heart and a noble intention. I was taken aback by this act of hospitality. We think of hand washing or foot washing at church in a very ritualized way. Before I put my hands under the lavabo, I use hand sanitizer to actually, clean my hands. It's a ritual act of hand washing that we do. And on Maundy Thursday, in a week's time, we will wash feet. We will wash each other's feet in a ritualized way. But on this day in Haiti, there was nothing ritualized at all about the action that we were doing. My hands were dirty from the long journey. She was about to offer me a simple meal, and my hands needed to be cleaned. And it was very striking to receive that kind of service, that kind of hospitality, that kind of gift from somebody who lived in a rural mountain village without electricity, with very limited resources. And here I was kind of parachuting in. I should be washing her hands, and yet it was her washing my hands. Today's gospel story about Jesus' visit to Bethany to have a meal with Mary and Martha and Lazarus is meant to prefigure in John's gospel the Last Supper and Jesus' final meal with his disciples. It's interesting. It comes in a series of three events, each of which is in the build-up to the events of the Holy Week and foreshadows them. The raising of Lazarus is often read in church as we head into the Holy Week, and it prefigures Jesus' own resurrection. The council of the elders and the scribes and the religious leaders meets next in John's gospel, and they decide after deep reflection that they're going to arrest Jesus and kill him. And this episode prefigures the very public trial that will occur on Good Friday. And then backing up one day further, you have this intimate dinner with Mary and Martha and Lazarus, meant to prefigure the Last Supper, Jesus' final meal with his closest friends, at which he instructs them how they are to be his disciples when he's no longer with them. What's so important about today's gospel, which might seem like a throwaway, which doesn't necessarily feel like it advances the action of the drama towards Good Friday and Easter Sunday, is the response of Mary. The response of Mary, who, when Jesus enters the home, kneels down, washes his feet, and anoints them with this costly ointment of pure nard. Apparently, it would have cost a year's wages to afford whatever this nard-based ointment was. When Mary does this and washes Jesus' feet, she is fulfilling the commandment of discipleship that Jesus is going to give his disciples on Maundy Thursday, before he's even given the commandment. Jesus says at the Last Supper that his disciples are to go and wash each other's feet the way that he has washed their feet. And here is Mary of Bethany washing Jesus' feet, the feet of the one she is welcoming, without him even instructing her that this is in fact the true mark of discipleship. If we ever had any doubt that women were part of Jesus' first disciple group, we have no doubt after reading this lesson. Because here is Mary of Bethany, who is visibly embodying the mark of discipleship, the mark by which we will be known as Christ's followers, before Christ even says it to her, before he announces that this is in fact the mark of discipleship. She does it out of her sense of passion, not because she's following Jesus' commandment, he hasn't given it yet, not because she thinks she ought to do or should do, but because she sees somebody coming to her table. It's her Lord. And her response to that is to kneel and to wash and to anoint, to break out the good stuff, to get the good nard and wash his feet and anoint him, because this is the last time he will be in her house. Just as last week, in the parable of the prodigal son, the father kills the fatted calf, the calf that he had been saving to celebrate. This is the moment. In the church, now we celebrate Holy Week as a one-week experience from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. In other times and places in the life of the church, the period of preparation for Easter, the intense period, has been a 2-week season, which would have begun today. And that 2-week season was known as Passiontide. And I invite you this morning to sit with this idea of Passiontide, this idea of passion being the motivating feature of our discipleship. Passion, the root of the word passion means suffering, and the root of the word compassion then means to suffer with. I think one of the deepest struggles of all of Jesus' disciples, Mary included, was the fact that she didn't want the one that she loved to die. This suffering that Jesus was going to undergo was her suffering as well. And the depth of feeling that she had in her own heart in this moment in which Jesus' safety is already in jeopardy motivates this act of extreme devotion. I think all of us, as we begin our own observance of Passiontide, would do well to reflect on the nature of our own devotion to God, to Jesus, our own sense of the Holy Spirit in our lives. The observances of the Holy Week that are coming soon are not just obligations, they're not just rituals that we go through. They are, in fact, opportunities for us to connect with the deepest longings and yearnings of our hearts, to know God, to kneel before Jesus, to open our hearts to him and offer whatever it is that is in our hearts, to know that God's presence is always with us, even when we know that the events that are to come that we will remember are deeply troubling and deeply sad. And there will be hope on the Easter morning. So I invite you to think about your own preparation for the Holy Week, which begins next Sunday on Palm Sunday, to consider in your own heart where you are in your devotional life with God, not just how you serve, not just the work you do for God, the ministry you perform for God, but where are you in your own heart, in your relationship with the divine? What gifts of devotion do you have to offer like Mary? It might not be pure nard. It might be moments of quiet. It might be deeper prayer before you go to bed, before your meals in the next 2 weeks? How can you soften yourself so that you can approach the cross and the empty tomb with the same passion, the same openness with which Mary welcomed Christ in this intimate final moment before he turned towards Jerusalem?